My name is Madeline, and at 35, I finally achieved my lifelong dream of buying my own home. After years of saving every penny, I was so excited to host my first family gathering in my beautiful new house. I spent weeks preparing, cooking, and decorating. When the big day arrived, I waited and waited. No one came. Not a single family member showed up. Later that night, scrolling through social media, I discovered the devastating truth: they had all gone to my cousin Rachel's impromptu pool party instead. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. Before I tell you how this crushing disappointment led to the most unexpected turning point in my life, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever felt abandoned by the people who should have been there for you. I grew up in a small, modest home in the suburbs of Chicago. My parents, Barbara and Thomas, worked hard but always struggled financially. Our house was cramped, with peeling wallpaper and a perpetually leaking roof. Still, I loved daydreaming about someday owning a beautiful home with bay windows, hardwood floors, and a garden where I could plant flowers and vegetables. I would sketch house plans in my notebooks during school, imagining every detail of my future sanctuary. Our extended family was large and supposedly close-knit, gathering for every holiday and milestone. But beneath the surface of those smiling family photos was a current of competition and favoritism that I felt acutely from a young age. My cousin Rachel, just 3 months younger than me, was the golden child of the family. Whatever Rachel did was praised extravagantly, while my achievements were acknowledged with polite nods at best. When I graduated with honors while working full-time, my family hosted a small dinner at home. When Rachel graduated with average grades a week later, Aunt Patricia threw her an elaborate party that everyone attended for the entire weekend. This pattern repeated throughout our lives, with Rachel receiving the lion's share of attention, support, and praise. My brother Kevin wasn't much help either. 2 years younger than me, he had mastered the art of following the family majority. "Don't rock the boat, Maddie," he would tell me whenever I expressed hurt at being overlooked. "It's just easier to go along with things." Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, was perhaps the worst offender. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough for her. My apartment was too small, my car too old, my job not prestigious enough. Uncle Gerald had once been my ally, sneaking me extra dessert at family gatherings and telling me he believed in me. But over the years, even he had drifted into Rachel's orbit, won over by her charisma and the family's collective opinion. Family gatherings became an exercise in emotional endurance. I would sit at holiday dinners listening to everyone fawn over Rachel's latest accomplishment while my news went unmentioned. I learned to expect little acknowledgement and to find validation elsewhere. Despite the emotional challenges of my family dynamics, I remained determined to build the life I wanted. After graduating from college, I secured an entry-level position at a marketing firm. I worked longer hours than anyone else, volunteered for difficult projects, and gradually began moving up the corporate ladder. While Rachel flitted between jobs and relied on family connections to maintain her lifestyle, I was building something real through sheer determination. 6 months ago, I received a promotion to senior marketing director. The substantial salary increase finally put home ownership within reach. I had been saving for a down payment for nearly a decade, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment where I could hear my neighbors' every conversation through the paper-thin walls. I had sacrificed vacations, new clothes, and dinners out to put away as much as possible each month. The house hunting process was exhausting but exhilarating. I toured dozens of properties, none of them quite right, until my realtor called about a newly listed colonial with a wraparound porch and mature maple trees in the yard. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew it was home. The hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the bay windows. The kitchen had marble countertops and a farmhouse sink. And the backyard, with its garden beds and old wooden swing, was exactly what I had sketched in my notebooks all those years ago. Getting approved for the mortgage was nerve-wracking, and the closing process dragged on for what felt like forever. But finally, on a bright spring morning, the keys were placed in my hand. I moved in gradually over the next few weeks, arranging my furniture and hanging artwork on the walls. Each night, I would sit on my porch swing and marvel at the fact that this beautiful place was really mine. As soon as I was settled, I decided to host a housewarming party. I wanted my family to see what I had accomplished, to share in my joy and perhaps finally give me the recognition I had been seeking for so long. I sent out invitations 6 weeks in advance, beautiful handmade cards with pressed flowers from my new garden. Everyone RSVP'd yes, even Rachel, who mentioned she was so curious to see this house she'd been going on about. I spent the weeks leading up to the party in a flurry of preparation. I painted the guest bathroom, installed new light fixtures in the dining room, and planted additional flowers along the front walkway. I wanted everything to be perfect, a physical manifestation of all I had achieved through hard work and perseverance. Little did I know that my carefully planned celebration would become one of the most painful experiences of my life. I awoke at 5:30 on the morning of the housewarming, too excited to sleep any longer. Sunlight was just beginning to filter through the curtains of my bedroom, my beautiful bedroom with the window seat I had always dreamed of. I took a moment to appreciate how far I had come before jumping out of bed to begin final preparations. My to-do list was extensive but manageable. I had already deep cleaned the entire house the day before, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed. Today would be about final touches and food preparation. I started by arranging fresh flowers, peonies and hydrangeas from my garden, in crystal vases throughout the house. I fluffed the pillows on the living room sofa, straightened the hand towels in the bathrooms, and made sure the temperature was perfect. The menu had been planned weeks in advance. I had taken 3 days off work to prepare everything from scratch: my grandmother's famous lasagna, garlic bread with herbs from my garden, 3 different salads, roasted vegetables, and an assortment of desserts including my signature chocolate raspberry cake that everyone always requested for family gatherings. The refrigerator was packed with dishes ready to be heated, and the countertops were covered with cooling baked goods. By noon, everything was ready. The dining room table was set with my new dishes and sterling silver cutlery I had splurged on for the occasion. I had created personalized place cards with each family member's name written in calligraphy, positioning people strategically to encourage good conversation. A separate table was set up for the children, with colorful plates and small gift bags containing toys and candy. I had even created a playlist of everyone's favorite songs to play in the background, and photo albums of family memories were displayed on the coffee table. Outside, lawn games were set up for the afternoon, and string lights were ready to be turned on as evening approached. I had thought of everything. At 12:30, I showered and changed into the new dress I had bought specially for the occasion, a flattering blue sundress that brought out the color of my eyes. I styled my hair, applied light makeup, and put on the pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. Looking in the mirror, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was my moment. Today, finally, my family would see me. The party was scheduled to begin at 2 o'clock. By 1:45, I was watching the clock and peering out the window every few minutes, eager for the first arrivals. My parents had texted that morning confirming they were coming, and Kevin had sent a message saying he was bringing an extra bottle of wine. Aunt Patricia had called the previous day to ask if she could bring her new neighbor along, and I had happily agreed. 2 o'clock came and went. I wasn't worried yet, my family was notoriously late for everything. I busied myself with last-minute adjustments, rearranging the appetizer platter and lighting scented candles throughout the house. But by 2:30, when no one had arrived or called, a knot began forming in my stomach. I sent a group text: "House is ready and food is getting cold. Can't wait to see you all soon." 3 people read the message, but no one responded. The knot in my stomach tightened. By 3 o'clock, I was calling people individually. My mother's phone went straight to voicemail. My father didn't pick up. Kevin's phone rang and rang. I left increasingly concerned messages, my voice straining to sound casual and not desperate. 3:30. 4 o'clock. 4:30. Still, no one came. No calls. No explanations. I sat alone at my beautiful dining table, the lasagna now cold in its serving dish, the ice cream melting in its bowl. The playlist had cycled through twice. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my empty living room. At 5:15, I poured myself a large glass of wine and finally checked social media, something I had been avoiding all afternoon. And there it was, the explanation I hadn't wanted to find. My cousin Rachel had posted dozens of photos over the past 3 hours, all from an impromptu pool party at her apartment complex. Last minute get together with the fam. Read the caption on an image showing my parents, Kevin and his wife, Aunt Patricia, Uncle Gerald, and all the other relatives who had promised to come to my housewarming, laughing and eating hot dogs around a small above-ground pool. My hand shook as I scrolled through the images. There was my mother, helping serve potato salad. There was my father, playing with the children. There was Kevin, raising a beer and toast. Everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time at Rachel's hastily organized event in her rented apartment with its community pool, an event she had clearly planned to coincide exactly with my housewarming party. In one particularly painful photo, Aunt Patricia was captured mid-sentence, and the caption Rachel had added read, "Aunt P says this is way better than some boring house tour." The deliberate cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't a coincidence or a misunderstanding. This was intentional. I called my best friend Jessica, the only person outside my family I had invited who hadn't been able to come due to a previously planned business trip. When she answered, I couldn't even speak, I just sobbed into the phone. "Maddie? What's wrong? Are you okay?" Her concerned voice only made me cry harder. Between sobs, I managed to explain what had happened. Jessica's outrage on my behalf was the only thing that got me through those first few hours of humiliation and heartbreak. "Those absolute jerks," she fumed. "I'm cutting my trip short. I'll be there tomorrow." After we hung up, I sat alone in my dream house, surrounded by untouched food and empty chairs, and felt more alone than I ever had in my life. The shock wore off around midnight, giving way to a rage so intense it frightened me. I stormed around the house, yanking down decorations and blowing out candles. I couldn't bear to deal with the food, so I left it all sitting out, a monument to my humiliation. Instead, I took the bottle of wine upstairs to my bedroom and drank straight from it while scrolling through more social media posts from Rachel's party. The gathering had apparently continued well into the evening, with my family members showing no signs of remembering their commitment to me. There were photos of them playing drinking games, singing karaoke, and even one of my mother helping Rachel serve a store-bought sheet cake. The final post, timestamped at 11:30, showed Rachel surrounded by my family, all raising glasses in a toast. The caption read, "Best impromptu family day ever. So blessed to have relatives who drop everything to spend time together. Love you all." The calculated cruelty of it all brought memories flooding back, all the times my family had made me feel less than, invisible, unworthy of their attention and love. There was my 10th birthday party, when half the family left early because Rachel had a minor role in a school play the same evening. My high school graduation, when my parents missed my valedictorian speech because Rachel had called with boy troubles that apparently couldn't wait. My college graduation dinner, cut short because Rachel had announced her engagement to a boyfriend no one particularly liked and who she would break up with 2 months later. The pattern was clear, and it had been there all along. I had never been the priority. Never been important enough. Never been enough, period. I fell into a restless sleep around 3 in the morning and woke to sunlight streaming through windows I had forgotten to close. My head pounded, my eyes were swollen from crying, and the beautiful bedroom I had been so proud of now felt like a mockery. What was the point of achieving my dream if I had no one to share it with? As I shuffled downstairs to deal with the mess of abandoned food and decorations, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Kevin. "Hey sis, sorry we couldn't make it yesterday. Rachel's thing came up last minute and you know how mom and dad get. Your house looks nice in the pictures though." The casual dismissal of my feelings was infuriating. I didn't respond. An hour later, my parents called. "Madeline, we're so sorry about yesterday," my mother said, not sounding particularly sorry at all. "We just completely forgot which event was first, and once we were at Rachel's, it seemed silly to leave. You understand, don't you? We'll come see the house next weekend. It wasn't a scheduling mistake, Mom, I said, my voice hollow. My invitation went out 6 weeks ago. Rachel planned her party for the exact same time, and you all chose to go there instead. Now, don't be dramatic, my father chimed in from the background. No one was choosing anyone over anyone. These things just happen. But they didn't just happen. They were choices, made over and over again, always with the same result: Rachel was worth showing up for. I was not. After hanging up, I received a particularly hurtful text from Aunt Patricia. Darling, perhaps it's for the best we missed your event. That house seems like quite a lot for someone in your position. People might think you're showing off. Rachel's gathering was much more appropriate, casual and unpretentious. Uncle Gerald didn't contact me at all, and neither did Rachel. The silence from my cousin was perhaps the most telling. She knew exactly what she had done, and she didn't even feel the need to pretend otherwise. In her mind, this was simply the natural order of things. She extended an invitation, and everyone came running, regardless of prior commitments to me. The next few days passed in a blur of depression. I called in sick to work, unable to face people and their inevitable questions about the housewarming. I wandered from room to room in the house that had once represented all my hopes and dreams, now feeling cold and empty. What was the point of the beautiful garden if I was the only one who would ever see it? Why had I bothered creating a guest room that would never have guests? I found myself standing in the kitchen one evening, staring at the real estate agent's business card still pinned to my bulletin board. Maybe I should sell the house. Move to another city. Start fresh somewhere far away from my family and their constant reminder of my place in the hierarchy. Boston, perhaps, or Seattle. Somewhere with enough distance that I would have a legitimate excuse to miss family gatherings. As I contemplated this drastic change, I felt nothing but exhaustion. The thought of packing up, finding a new job, creating a new life, it was overwhelming. But staying felt impossible too. How could I continue to live here, in this house that now felt tainted by rejection? How could I enjoy my achievement when it had become a symbol of my family's indifference? By the end of the week, I was seriously researching job opportunities in other states. Jessica had come and gone, having done her best to cheer me up during a brief visit, but even her loyal friendship couldn't erase the hurt. I had stopped answering calls and texts from family members, unwilling to hear more excuses or half-hearted apologies. The disconnection felt both painful and necessary. I was at my lowest point, sitting on my porch swing one evening with a barely touched plate of dinner beside me, when everything changed in the most unexpected way. The doorbell rang at 7:45 on a Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after my disastrous housewarming. I almost didn't answer it. I was still in my work clothes, having come home and immediately sat on the porch without changing. My hair was a mess, and I knew my eyes were still puffy from crying during my lunch break. But the bell rang again, more insistently, and I reluctantly made my way to the door. Standing on my front porch were 3 groups of people I had never seen before. An elderly couple with matching silver hair stood at the front, holding what appeared to be a homemade pie. Behind them was a young family, a woman and man probably in their early 30s with 2 small children, a girl and a boy, who were shyly hiding behind their parents' legs. And to the side stood a man around my age with a teenage girl, both looking slightly awkward but smiling nonetheless. "Hello?" I said, confusion momentarily overriding my depression. The elderly woman stepped forward with a warm smile. "You must be Madeline. I'm Eleanor, and this is my husband Robert. We live in the blue house across the street." She gestured to the others. "This is Sarah and Michael with their children Emma and Noah from next door, and James and his daughter Lily from 2 doors down." I blinked in surprise. "Oh, nice to meet you all. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting visitors." "We know, dear," Eleanor said kindly. "And we normally would have come by sooner to welcome you to the neighborhood, but we wanted to give you time to settle in." Then Marjorie, she's our mail carrier, mentioned there had been some kind of problem with your housewarming party last week. She said no one showed up. Eleanor's expression was sympathetic without being pitying. We thought perhaps you could use some company and a proper welcome to Maple Street. For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. These strangers had come together to welcome me when my own family couldn't be bothered. I felt tears welling up again and tried desperately to blink them away. That's very kind of you, I managed, stepping back. Would you like to come in? What followed was one of the most unexpectedly wonderful evenings of my life. My neighbors filed into my home, bringing not just Eleanor's apple pie but a bottle of wine from Sarah and Michael, and a beautiful potted plant from James and Lily. They exclaimed appreciatively over the house, admiring the renovations I'd done and asking questions about my design choices. There was no undercurrent of jealousy or judgment, just genuine admiration and interest. We gathered in my living room, and for the first time since moving in, the space felt like a home rather than a showpiece. Eleanor and Robert settled on the sofa, sharing stories of the neighborhood's history. They had lived in their house for over 50 years and had watched the area transform through the decades. We bought our place when we were just 25, Robert said. Everyone told us we were crazy to take on such an old house, but it's been the best decision we ever made. Just like you, Eleanor added warmly. Marjorie mentioned you're quite young to have purchased such a lovely home on your own. That's an accomplishment to be proud of. Sarah and Michael's children, initially shy, had become comfortable enough to explore the first floor of the house. 7-year-old Emma was particularly fascinated by my collection of art books, while 5-year-old Noah was drawn to the window seat where he could watch cars pass by. They'd been curious about who moved in, Sarah explained with a laugh. They were hoping for other kids, but they've decided you're acceptable because you have the best windows for spying, according to Noah. James and his 14-year-old daughter Lily were quieter, but no less friendly. James was a high school science teacher who had moved to the neighborhood 3 years ago after his wife passed away. Lily, artistic and thoughtful, complimented the color scheme of my kitchen and asked if I would mind her sketching my garden sometime. It's exactly the kind of garden I want to create when I have my own house someday, she explained, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. As the evening progressed, I found myself sharing more than I had intended, about my job, my journey to home ownership, and eventually, even the painful truth about my family's absence at the housewarming. They all went to my cousin's impromptu pool party instead, I admitted, the hurt still fresh. No one even called to cancel. They just didn't show up. Instead of the awkward silence I expected, my neighbors responded with genuine indignation on my behalf. That's terrible, Sarah said firmly. And completely unacceptable. Family should be there for the important moments, Robert added, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had lived long enough to know what truly mattered. James nodded in agreement. After my wife died, I learned quickly who would show up and who wouldn't. It changed how I viewed many relationships. His expression was understanding, free from judgment. Sometimes the family we create is more reliable than the one we're born into. Eleanor reached over and patted my hand. You know what I think? I think this lovely house deserves a proper celebration. The neighborhood block party is coming up in 3 weeks. Why don't we host it here? It would be a wonderful way for everyone to see your beautiful home and for you to meet the rest of the neighbors. The others enthusiastically agreed, and before I knew what was happening, plans were being made for a neighborhood gathering in my yard and home. For the first time in a week, I felt a glimmer of excitement. You really wouldn't mind? I asked Sarah, who was already discussing menu options with Eleanor. Mind? We'd love it, she exclaimed. The block party is usually in the community park, which is fine but not very intimate. Your garden would be perfect, and it gives everyone a chance to welcome you properly. By the time my unexpected guests left nearly 3 hours later, we had a solid plan for the block party. I had their phone numbers programmed into my phone, and I had laughed more than I had in months. Standing at the door waving goodbye, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again so soon, a sense of belonging. That night, as I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and was surprised to see a smile on my face. My family's rejection still hurt deeply, but something new had taken root alongside the pain, the possibility that I could create connections that were chosen, not obligatory. That I could find people who showed up not out of duty, but because they genuinely wanted to be there. For the first time, I looked at my house and saw not what my family had failed to appreciate, but what my new neighbors had valued. Not a symbol of rejection, but a place of new beginnings. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose that had been missing since the housewarming disaster. I had a neighborhood block party to help plan, and people who were actually counting on me. I dressed with care for work, no longer feeling the need to hide away in shame. That evening, Eleanor called to invite me to a neighborhood committee meeting at her house. Just a small gathering to discuss the block party details, she explained. We had these meetings monthly, but this one's special because of the change of venue. I arrived at Eleanor and Robert's charming blue Victorian to find 8 neighbors already gathered in their sunroom, sipping iced tea and sharing a plate of cookies. Besides my visitors from the previous evening, there was Tom and Diana, a middle-aged couple from the end of the street, Hector, a retired postal worker who had delivered mail to the neighborhood for 30 years before Marjorie took over, and Angela, a vivacious woman in her 60s who apparently organized most community events. So you're the one who bought the Jenkins place? Angela exclaimed when we were introduced. I've been dying to see what you've done with it. Martha Jenkins was a dear friend, but her decorating tastes were stuck in 1975. The meeting was unlike any committee meeting I'd ever attended. There was structure. Angela kept us on topic with gentle but firm redirection when conversations wandered, but also warmth and genuine camaraderie. I learned that the block party was a 40-year tradition on Maple Street, originally started by Eleanor and Robert in 1983 to bring together an increasingly diverse neighborhood. Back then, some of the older residents were a bit wary of the young families moving in, Eleanor explained. We thought breaking bread together might help everyone see we were all just people wanting the same things: safe streets, good schools, and friendly faces to greet each day. As we discussed logistics for hosting the party at my house, I learned more about the neighborhood's history and the people who had lived there. Hector shared stories of watching children grow up over his decades of delivering mail. Tom and Diana, who had moved in 15 years ago, talked about how welcoming the street had been when they adopted their son from South Korea. This isn't just a neighborhood, Diana told me. It's a community in the truest sense. When our son Justin was struggling to adjust, Robert built him a treehouse as a special place to feel secure. Eleanor taught him to bake. Angela organized a welcome parade. People here show up for each other. The concept of people showing up hit close to home after my recent experience, and I must have looked emotional because Sarah, sitting next to me, gave my hand a quick squeeze of understanding. The planning process continued over the next 2 weeks, with regular meetings alternating between various neighbors' homes. Each gathering helped strengthen my new friendships and integrated me further into the community. I found myself looking forward to these evenings, even after long days at work. Speaking of work, I gradually began sharing parts of my story with a few close colleagues. My assistant, Maria, was particularly supportive, expressing appropriate outrage at my family's behavior and offering to help with block party preparations. 2 other coworkers, David and Amara, also volunteered their assistance, and I found myself extending invitations to them. The circle of people I could count on was expanding in ways I hadn't anticipated. Jessica returned from her business trip and immediately threw herself into party planning with characteristic enthusiasm. This is exactly what you need, she declared as we shopped for outdoor string lights one weekend. New people who appreciate you for who you are, not who they expect you to be. Throughout this period, contact with my family remained minimal. Kevin had texted a few more times, his messages growing increasingly concerned at my brief responses. My parents called weekly, leaving voicemails that ranged from defensive, "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about this," to guilt-inducing, "Your father isn't feeling well, and your silence is making it worse." I responded only to direct questions, protecting my healing heart from further injury. Rachel, predictably, never reached out at all. Through family grapevine, I heard she was planning another gathering for my parents' anniversary, despite knowing I had already arranged a dinner reservation at their favorite restaurant. Some patterns never changed. I made the conscious decision not to invite any family members to the block party. This event wasn't about trying to prove anything to them or seeking their approval. It was about embracing the community that had welcomed me so warmly, about celebrating connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. As the party approached, I found myself nervous but in an entirely different way than I had been before the housewarming. This wasn't anxiety about being judged or found wanting. It was the butterflies of excitement, the anticipation of hosting people who genuinely wanted to be there. The evening before the block party, my house was once again filled with activity. Sarah and Michael were helping hang lights in the backyard while their children supervised from the porch swing. James and Lily were setting up tables borrowed from the community center. Eleanor was in my kitchen, teaching me her secret recipe for lemonade while Robert and Hector arranged chairs in conversational groupings throughout the yard. Jessica arrived with flowers from her garden and immediately joined Angela in creating centerpieces for the tables. My coworkers showed up with homemade dishes to contribute to tomorrow's spread. The house hummed with conversation and laughter. In the midst of this happy chaos, my phone rang. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I stepped onto the front porch to answer. "Maddie? Thank God. I've been worried sick about you," my brother said. "I'm fine, Kevin," I replied, watching through the window as my new friends worked together in my living room. "Actually, I'm better than fine. Look, I know you're still upset about the housewarming thing, and I don't blame you. It was really crappy what happened." "Yes, it was," I agreed, not offering absolution. There was a pause before Kevin continued, his voice lower. "I miss you, sis. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. I should have stood up to everyone and come to your party. I was a coward." His apology, the first genuine one from any family member, caught me off guard. Before I could respond, he continued. "Would it be okay if I came by tomorrow? I'd like to see your new place, properly this time. Jenny wants to come too. No one else, just us." I hesitated, torn between the desire to protect my newfound joy and the pull of family ties, however complicated. From inside, I heard Eleanor call my name, asking about serving bowls for tomorrow. "Actually, Kevin, I'm hosting a neighborhood block party tomorrow. You and Jenny would be welcome to come, but it's not going to be a private tour. It's a community thing." "A block party? That sounds great, actually. We'd love to come. What time?" As I gave him the details, I felt a strange mix of emotions, caution, hope, a tentative openness to reconnection on new terms. I wasn't naive enough to think one conversation had healed years of family dynamics, but it was a start. When I went back inside, Jessica gave me a questioning look. "My brother," I explained. "He and his wife are coming tomorrow." "Are you okay with that?" she asked, protective as always. I looked around at the warm, vibrant scene in my home. People who had been strangers 3 weeks ago now working together to create something special in a house that finally felt like mine in every sense. "Yes," I said with newfound confidence. "I'm okay with it. This is my home and my community now. I get to decide who's welcome here." And for the first time in my life, that decision felt like power rather than vulnerability. The morning of the block party dawned with perfect late spring weather, 75 degrees, clear blue skies, and just enough breeze to keep things comfortable. I had been up since 6, too excited to sleep, putting final touches on decorations and checking my lists one last time. Eleanor and Robert arrived at 9, an hour before we had agreed to start setup. "We thought you might need an extra pair of hands," Eleanor explained, handing me a fresh thermos of coffee. "Or just some moral support." Their thoughtfulness nearly brought me to tears. Throughout my life, I had grown accustomed to doing everything myself, to not expecting help or consideration from others. These small gestures of care from my new friends still caught me off guard. Sarah and Michael arrived next with their children, who immediately ran to the backyard to test the lawn games I had set up. James and his daughter Lily came bearing trays of homemade cookies, followed by Tom and Diana with folding tables. By 10:30, my driveway was filled with neighbors I was still getting to know, all pitching in to transform my yard and home into a welcoming space for the community gathering. Angela, the unofficial mayor of the neighborhood, directed operations with cheerful efficiency. Tables along the fence, please. Food stations in the shade. Michael, those speakers need to go by the patio where people can hear the music but still converse. Jessica arrived with the final decorations we had purchased. Banners reading "Welcome to Maple Street" and "Community and Friendship," and helped me hang them across the front porch. My co-workers Maria, David, and Amara showed up early as promised, bringing additional folding chairs and immediately jumping in to help wherever needed. By noon, everything was ready. My garden had been transformed into a festive gathering space with tables draped in cheerful cloths, string lights crisscrossing overhead ready to be lit when evening came, and lawn games set up in the side yard. Inside, the house was prepared for tours, with small flower arrangements in each room and refreshments set up in the kitchen. "It looks wonderful," Jessica assured me as we stood on the porch surveying our work. "Nothing like the stuffy housewarming you had planned." She was right. This was different, less formal, more joyful. Not a showcase of achievement but a celebration of connection. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. The party officially began at 1 o'clock, and neighbors began arriving right on time, a stark contrast to my family's habitual lateness. Eleanor had told me to expect about 50 people from our street and the surrounding blocks, but it quickly became clear that more than that would be attending. Word had spread about the new neighbor hosting the annual event, and curiosity had drawn residents from several streets over. I found myself greeting people constantly, accepting housewarming gifts I hadn't expected, and giving impromptu tours of the main floor of my home. Unlike the anxiety I had felt before my failed family gathering, this time I enjoyed showing people around, their genuine appreciation for the work I had done reinforcing my own pride in my accomplishment. "You've done wonders with this place," said an older woman who introduced herself as Gladys from 2 streets over. "I knew the Jenkins family for 40 years, and Martha would be so pleased to see how you've honored the character of the home while making it your own." Children ran through the sprinkler I had set up in one corner of the yard, their laughter providing a joyful soundtrack to the afternoon. Adults gathered around food tables, introducing themselves to me and to each other. I overheard Eleanor proudly telling people, "Madeline bought this house all on her own, you know. Senior marketing director at 35. By 3 o'clock, the party was in full swing. I was chatting with a group of neighbors when I spotted Kevin and his wife Jenny at the edge of the yard, looking slightly uncertain. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself and went to greet them. "You came," I said, giving Jenny a quick hug and hesitating before doing the same with my brother. "Of course we did," Kevin replied, handing me a gift bag. "Wow, Maddie. This place is amazing. And all these people." "My neighbors," I explained. "And some friends from work. Come on, I'll introduce you." As we walked through the crowd, Kevin grew quieter, his expression thoughtful. When we reached the patio where Eleanor was holding court with several other longtime residents, I made the introductions. "This is my brother Kevin and his wife Jenny. Kevin, this is Eleanor and Robert, who've lived across the street for 50 years, and Angela, who organized most of this party, and Hector, who knows all the neighborhood gossip because I delivered the mail here for 3 decades, Hector finished with a laugh, shaking Kevin's hand warmly. The conversation flowed easily, but I could tell something was bothering my brother. After a while, he asked if we could talk privately. We stepped into the kitchen, which was momentarily empty. "What's up?" I asked, bracing myself for whatever criticism or excuse he might offer. Kevin looked uncharacteristically serious. "I owe you a real apology, Maddie. Not just for missing your housewarming, but for a lot of things over the years." I stayed silent, waiting. Seeing all these people here today, how they've welcomed you and appreciate you. He gestured toward the backyard. It made me realize how badly we've treated you. How badly I've treated you. It wasn't all bad, I said automatically, the peacemaker role so ingrained I fell into it without thinking. No, it was, Kevin insisted. Rachel deliberately scheduled her party the same day as yours. She showed everyone the invitation you sent and then planned her thing specifically to compete. And we all knew it, Maddie. We all knew what she was doing, and we went along with it anyway. The confirmation of what I had suspected, that the conflict hadn't been accidental but deliberate sabotage, hit hard. Why? I asked, the hurt fresh again. Why would she do that? And why would you all let her? Kevin ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Because it's what we've always done. Mom and Dad have always favored Rachel, and the rest of us just follow their lead. It's easier than standing up to them. To her. He met my eyes directly. It's not right, and I'm ashamed of myself. His honesty was unexpected and disarming. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Does Rachel know you're here today? I finally asked. Kevin nodded. She does. She's furious about it, actually. Said I was betraying the family by coming to see you before you'd apologized to everyone. Apologized? I repeated incredulously. For what? For overreacting to the housewarming thing. For making Mom feel bad. For buying a house that makes Rachel's apartment look small. He shook his head. It's all nonsense, Maddie. I see that now. From the backyard, I could hear laughter and music, the sounds of people enjoying themselves in the home I had created. I thought about my family. The people who should have been my strongest supporters but who had consistently made me feel less than, and the choice before me now. Kevin, I said slowly, I appreciate your apology. I really do. And you and Jenny are welcome here today. But I need time to think about what happens next with the rest of the family. I can't just pretend nothing happened. I understand, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I think you built something really special here. Not just the house, but this. He gestured to the gathering outside. People who actually show up for you. His words echoed what James had said about chosen family, and I felt a surge of gratitude for my new community. They do show up, I agreed. Every single time. We rejoined the party, and I introduced Kevin and Jenny to more neighbors. I watched as my brother relaxed, joining a group playing cornhole in the side yard, while Jenny fell into conversation with Sarah about their children. They fit in surprisingly well, and I allowed myself to hope that this might be the beginning of a healthier relationship with at least one member of my family. As evening approached, Angela called for everyone's attention and made a brief speech thanking me for hosting. To my surprise, she then announced that the neighborhood committee had unanimously voted to make me their newest member. Madeline has shown us the true meaning of community spirit, Angela declared to applause from the gathered neighbors. Her generosity in opening her beautiful new home for our annual celebration is exactly the kind of neighborliness that makes Maple Street special. The acceptance and appreciation I felt in that moment was overwhelming. These people barely knew me, yet they had embraced me more fully than my own family ever had. As I looked around at the smiling faces, the children playing, the elderly couples who had welcomed me so warmly, I knew I had found my place. The party continued until well after dark, the string lights creating a magical atmosphere in the yard. People lingered, reluctant to end the celebration, and I felt the same way. This day had healed something in me that I hadn't realized was still so broken, my belief that I wasn't worth showing up for. As the last guests began to leave, many stopped to hug me and thank me for hosting. Eleanor and Robert were among the final departures, staying to help with initial cleanup despite my protests. Today was wonderful, dear, Eleanor said, patting my cheek affectionately. You brought new energy to our little community. I think this is the beginning of many beautiful gatherings in this home. Standing on my porch waving goodbye as they crossed the street to their house, I felt a profound sense of peace. My house had finally become a home, not because of its beautiful features or careful decorating, but because it was now filled with the warmth of genuine connections. Kevin and Jenny were the last to leave, helping me bring in the folding tables and chairs. As they prepared to go, Kevin hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, sis," he said. "And I'm sorry it took me so long to show it." After they drove away, I sat alone on my porch swing, listening to the night sounds of my neighborhood and feeling, for perhaps the first time in my adult life, that I truly belonged somewhere. 1 month after the block party, my house had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. What had once felt like a showpiece, beautiful but somehow hollow, now felt lived in and loved. The dining room that had witnessed my solitary heartbreak on the night of the failed housewarming now regularly hosted Sunday dinners with neighbors. The garden that I had planted hoping to impress my family now provided flowers for Eleanor's arrangements and vegetables that I shared with Sarah's children, who had developed a surprising taste for fresh cherry tomatoes. My relationship with the neighborhood had deepened beyond my expectations. I had joined not only the neighborhood committee as officially announced at the block party, but also a gardening club that met in different members' yards each weekend. Robert had helped me install a bird feeder outside my kitchen window, and we had developed a ritual of texting each other when particularly interesting birds visited. Lily, James's artistic daughter, had indeed sketched my garden and had presented me with the framed drawing as a belated housewarming gift. Perhaps most meaningful were the impromptu gatherings that happened without planning. Neighbors stopping by with extra baked goods, evening conversations on the porch, weekend coffee with whoever happened to be out walking when I was enjoying my morning cup on the front steps. My house had become a gathering place not because I had orchestrated it, but because people genuinely enjoyed being there. Jessica now visited every Wednesday evening for what we called our midweek reset, wine, takeout, and unfiltered conversation. During one such evening, she remarked on the change in me. "You seem lighter," she observed. "More yourself somehow." She was right. The constant need for validation that had driven so many of my choices had eased. I no longer felt I had to prove my worth through achievements or possessions. The neighbors who had embraced me did so without conditions or comparisons. They valued me for who I was, not what I had accomplished or how I measured up against someone else. My relationship with my family remained complicated. Kevin and I had begun rebuilding our connection, meeting for lunch every few weeks and texting regularly. He was making a genuine effort to understand the patterns that had shaped our family dynamics and his role in perpetuating them. My parents had eventually visited the house, 3 weeks after the block party. The visit was awkward but civil, with my mother making stiff compliments about the decor while my father examined the craftsmanship of the woodwork with professional interest. Neither directly addressed the housewarming debacle, though my mother made several oblique references to misunderstandings and overreactions. I had decided, with the help of both Jessica and my new friends, to set clear boundaries with my parents. I would attend major family events and maintain a cordial relationship, but I no longer expected the validation and support I had spent decades seeking. That freedom from expectation had been surprisingly liberating. Rachel and I had not spoken at all. Kevin informed me that she was planning her wedding to a man she had been dating for only 3 months, consuming the family's attention with elaborate plans and demands. In the past, this would have bothered me deeply. Now, I found I could wish her well without needing to be part of the drama. The most profound change, however, was in how I viewed the concept of family itself. Eleanor had said something during one of our garden club meetings that had resonated deeply. Family isn't about who's obligated to love you. It's about who chooses to love you, even when they don't have to. That philosophy had reshaped my understanding of connection. The neighbors who had shown up with pie when I was at my lowest, the colleagues who had volunteered their Saturday to help with a party for people they didn't know, Jessica who had cut short a business trip to support me, these were my chosen family, bound by mutual care rather than shared DNA. This realization had extended to other areas of my life as well. I had become more intentional about nurturing relationships that added value and joy, and more willing to let go of connections that drained or diminished me. The result was a smaller but infinitely more supportive circle of people I could truly count on. On the last Friday of each month, I now hosted a dinner party for what I had come to think of as my core chosen family: Eleanor and Robert, James and Lily, Sarah and Michael, and occasionally their children, if appropriate for the evening's menu and conversation, Jessica, and a rotating selection of other neighbors and friends. We gathered around my dining room table. The same one that had stood empty and accusatory on the night of the housewarming, and shared food, stories, and genuine connection. During the most recent dinner, as I looked around at the animated faces of people who had been strangers just months before, I was struck by how differently things had turned out from what I had planned. The rejection that had felt like the end of something had actually been the beginning. The empty house that had symbolized my failure had become full in ways I couldn't have imagined. A toast, Robert proposed, raising his glass. To Madeline, who has reminded us all that it's never too late to build the family you deserve. As glasses clinked and warm smiles were directed my way, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. The ache of my blood family's rejection hadn't disappeared entirely. Such wounds don't heal completely, but it had been overshadowed by the joy of finding where I truly belonged. In the end, my dream house had become more than just a physical structure I owned. It had become the foundation for a different kind of dream altogether, one where I was valued, supported, and loved for exactly who I was. The family that didn't show up had unknowingly given me the greatest gift, the push I needed to find the people who would. So if you're watching this and feeling overlooked or undervalued by the people who should love you most, remember that sometimes the family we create matters more than the family we're born into. The empty chairs at your table can make room for those who truly want to be there. Have you ever had to create your own chosen family? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for being part of my journey, and I hope to see you in the next video.